Hey, what's going on guys? Arekkz here. Welcome back to another video for Godfall, and today I want to talk about 3 brand new Valorplates and some more gameplay information. Last night was Gamescom opening night live, and following that, IGN had an interview with Keith Lee, and once again they dove into the game, they took a look at some gameplay, spoke about some of the, gameplay aspects, some of the customization stuff. Basically, for those of you guys that are interested in following the game, there's some cool stuff worth talking about. So, if you guys do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. From the 3 new Valorplates, which one is your favourite? And yeah, if you're excited for Godfall, as always, make sure you stick around, subscribe, turn on notifications, because we are continuing to cover this game. So, let's start at the top. What do we have? Well, the 3 new Valorplates, very quickly, are Vertigo, Typhon, and Mesa. We also got a name check for a couple more. They haven't actually linked those names to the Valorplates, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. And these 3 look incredibly cool. Of course, some of the ones we've seen so far have had that sort of animal theme. Meanwhile, some of the other ones are taking more so, well, it's kind of like a Zodiac theme to them as well. But we'll kind of go into their actual abilities later on. But kind of starting at the top, just sort of breaking down what Keith Lee was talking about. He was saying, of course, when you talk about Valorplates, much like we kind of know already, I've kind of covered this and spoken about sort of how Valorplates work, but he said that you can think of Valorplates like weapons platform. This is, for all intents and purposes, the class system in the game, so depending on the Valorplate you choose will of course influence how you play. That much we know. However, going a little bit deeper, they spoke a bit more about how we will customize them. So they said that each Valorplate has a different, what they're calling, augment constellation. Each Valorplate has their own activation ability, as we know. They have their own always on trait. But they said that when it comes to augmenting them, you can think of Valorplates sort of like star constellations, where you have these constellation maps and all these augment slots. These augments can then be slotted into different nodes on the constellation. The augments you have to match the color of the nodes, but basically one of the interesting things about this one is the proximity and how you arrange these will affect the final output and the final effect on your Valorplate. So this, admittedly it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to see it. I haven't seen these, or nobody's seen these in game yet, so we don't know quite how broad or extensive those constellation maps are, but it does still sound rather interesting. The fact that, we knew from the interview that I had a little while ago that of course you can get augments, and some of these augments will, be passive things, meanwhile other ones will drastically change your build. But to know that the augments you get have to A, fit based on color, but also B, based on the way that you arrange them and their proximity to one another can actually drastically change your Valorplate, basically lays the foundation for some pretty kind of extensive build opportunities. At least that's how it sounds. I mean, the idea, they've already said that you could have 2 people playing the exact same Valorplate and they play completely differently. So I'm definitely interested to sort of see how that pans out. Obviously, until we can actually see that in gameplay, till we can see some menus, till we get an actual visual representation as to how that works, it is still very much a big question. But that kind of gives us an idea as to how you might be customizing your Valorplate, because again, keep in mind, visually speaking, we are going to be keeping the Valorplates as they are. There are kind of color swap options, but we're not going to be having different visible pieces of gear we equip. But knowing that we can underlying kind of alter the augments and change the way we play does sound pretty cool. They said the Valorplates fall into one of 3 primary categories: balanced, specialized, and exotic. Some of these are geared for high DPS, some of them focus on cooldown abilities, and some focus on debuffs in co-op, crowd control, and even tanking, which of course sounds pretty exciting. I mentioned last time that when we kind of got a little glimpse at the Valorplates in that sort of sanctum, that I get a feeling this sort of Viking looking one might be the tank one. I really hope it is, because that's just the playstyle I want. I just want to go in, there was a time where I used to be all DPS focused. Nowadays, I just want to be a tank. I just want to be big and strong. I want to be able to go headlong into battle and know that I'm not going to get clapped straight away. Anyway, that being said, let's turn our attention to these 3 new Valorplates. So the first one, shown of course during the Gamescom stream, was Vertigo. This one is a sort of insect, almost moth-like appearance, which is quite cool. It's kind of a stark contrast to everything we've seen up until now. A lot of the other ones have had these sort of typical animal aesthetics to them, so wolf, lion, eagles, that kind of thing. But this is of course our insect look, which is very, very cool. And this one, admittedly they didn't actually go specifically into their abilities, so I'm kind of inferring this from the gameplay, but it seems to have some sort of charge ability. This seems to be different than the kind of regular dual blade moves that we've seen when they gave us the dual blade combat breakdown. It also appears to have a quick backdash too, so it could well be, a high DPS speed focused plate. Maybe it's one of those ones that's designed to be, the DPS category. You dash in, you dash out, kind of glass cannon, not very strong on the defense front, but can move very quickly. There also appears to be some sort of glowing blue status where your sort of insect antenna stand up, so assuming this could well be when you activate your Archon mode, maybe it's tied to something like cooldown reduction. Keith Lee did however say that Vertigo as a plate is focused on shock. So he said that some of the different plates have, of course, different elemental focuses or foci, and shock is the focus for Vertigo. So, you know, again, we didn't necessarily see exactly in gameplay how that plays out, but knowing that you've got that ability to kind of inflict that elemental status based on your plate is going to be quite interesting. The other one they spoke about was Mesa. This one appears to have an ability where it can summon these turrets that fire sort of concentrated laser beams at a target enemy, which is quite cool. And, you know, while they didn't necessarily say too much about that one, they did say Mesa is also focused on poison. And they said the cool thing about this one is that if you poison an enemy and that enemy then dies, that poison will spread to nearby enemies. So in that respect, Mesa could be considered to be quite good for, you know, crowd control, group DPS, just kind of in general sort of applying debuffs to enemies, that sort of thing. Also, it looks kind of cool. It's got these sort of small ram horns on the head. I like that a lot. The other one is Typhon. They didn't actually say anything about this one. I believe this is the one that we actually saw in the Sanctum. The one that I said had that sort of reptilian sort of look to it. Admittedly, seeing up close now, that reptilian feel is not really there as much, but either way, it still looks pretty cool. We see this one wielding the big Warhammer quite a lot, which looks very, very awesome. But to see that in combat is, you know, it's definitely a sight to behold. So obviously we now have 3 additional Valorplates that we've seen in combat to go alongside the existing roster. They did also name check a couple of other ones. They didn't link them to the Valorplates though. So keep in mind the sort of red coloured one with the eagles on the shoulders and the white one with the sort of owl or sort of hawk look to it. We don't actually know the names for those ones yet. So they have said the other Valorplates are called Sirius and Armistice. One of them is more tank focused, one of them is DPS crowd control focused. Sirius is the tank, Armistice is the DPS crowd control one, so those names could tie to the ones we've already seen. I do think if they're kind of talking tank, then maybe Sirius could be that Viking looking one, but again, you know, that much we'll have to wait and see. Outside of that, they spoke a little bit more about Archon mode. Most of this we already know from before, but a couple of kind of additional things worth mentioning. They said that Archon mode, when you think about it for Valorplates, you can split it into kind of 4 states. You have your passive buff, which, you know, you just have simply by having the equipment equipped. You have your activation ability, which is, you know, they actually gave an example this time for Silvermane, where he summons 3 ancient glaive allies. They also then have, during the activation, you have a set of buffs, which again we know that from, you know, looking at, say, Hinterclaw, we know that the kind of buff just amps up your passive, so that is pretty sweet. However, the other thing they spoke about, the 4th thing, are triggers. This is a new thing, so triggers are rather interesting because if you trigger a condition based off of your Valorplate during your Archon mode, when you kind of got it active, you can escalate that effect, and furthermore, if you keep meeting those conditions, you can basically rack up the damage and, to my understanding, keep it going, maybe not indefinitely, but you can basically extend your duration. So every Valorplate will have something different. You know, maybe if you got a damage focused one, it might be, you know, hitting a certain damage number or killing a certain number of enemies or comboing, you know, something specific, right? But then if you meet those conditions, it will amp up the ability. So I guess this is where the mastery element comes into it, because surface level, of course, the game's gonna be pretty accessible, basic combat, basic abilities, but if you are really good, you get to the point where, you know, you get your parries down, you get all your different moves down, all that kind of stuff like that, then there is gonna be potential to really sort of master those plates, which is pretty sweet. And then finally, one more thing worth noting, in co-op play, they spoke about an additional mechanic whereby you can put down banners. So banners will be things that basically provide AoE buffs to you and your party. The example they gave was like a healing banner, you can drop it down to heal people nearby, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are things like defensive banners, attack focused banners, maybe cooldown reduction banners, effectively ways to further help your team. So obviously, you know, there's definitely kind of mechanics there that are going to be lending themselves nicely to co-op play. But for the time being, that is a little rundown on some of the new information for Godfall. Look at the new Valorplates. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Again, if you have any questions, by all means let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to keep it locked for plenty more Godfall coverage. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, you can join the Arekkz Gaming Discord. We've got an awesome community over there with so many different channels for you to chat loads of different topics and different games. I'm in there, the team's in there. If you guys want to chat with us, find people to play with, it's just in general a great place to be. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads.